we're still looking at this XP300 Space Station from Digitech, this old pedal from the 90s, which you can really only get secondhand. And it has 40 effects on there, 39 really, because 40 is the volume pedal, which, you know, probably if you really need volume pedal, you're probably going to have a special standalone for that. I certainly do. And we talked about the fact that there's a lot of effects in there, so I'm really doing them in blocks of 10 because they fall into 4 different types. There's the synth block, which is bringing in strings in octaves, fourths or fifths, or a little chorus, which is super cool to swell and add some kind of ethereal shoegaze element to your music. The second block was the time warp, so you've got reverse playback and strange octave whammy effects, some super weird stuff in there. The third group, I don't really even know how to explain it. It talks about pixelators and ring modulators in the descriptions, but they're a little hard to understand and explain. They're better just listened to. One band member I was playing with years ago said they sound like aliens talking. It is called the alien block. All 10 of these are alien sounds. So let's start with number 20. 20 and 21 are pixelators. That's what it's called, pixelation. On 20, the pedal will control the mix, and on 21, it will control the amount. So it's kind of pixelating the sound. So I guess if you think about old images loading on the internet when they get pixelated because the bandwidth is too slow, I guess it's doing something like that to the sound, which is kind of weird to think about. But by mixing the dry and the pixelated, you can kind of get a sense of what's happening as it breaks up that sound and kind of dissolves it somewhat. Slightly out of tune because the pixelation does something weird to the pitch as well. So it's definitely a very specific effect. Whereas the pedal is controlling the mix of dry and pixelated, 21 is controlling how much, the amount of the pixelation. Just a little bit and quite a lot. Which is really weird and gives you some ear-piercing sounds. So with the pedal rocked all the way back and minimum pixelation, here's a simple G-string bend, bending up to the B note from A on the G-string. And it kind of hurts the ears a little bit. So if I rock the pedal all the way forward and do the same bend, it's almost got no relationship whatsoever to the original pitch that you're playing at. So it's a sparing effect because it's not so much musical as just atmospheric and atonal almost. 22 and 23 are what's known as alien pixelators, and the pedal controls the rate on 22 and the input level on 23. So let's just get a sense of what that does. I mean, it really does feel like somebody who grew up in the 70s watching Star Trek and getting used to the kind of sound effects on Doctor Who or whatever, thought, why don't we do that to the guitar sounds and build a guitar pedal, and they came along in the 90s 20 years later and did it. It kind of sounds like that, to be honest. So I'm really not sure again how you'd use some of these. Some of the effects on here are priceless. The synth block, if you haven't checked that out, go and check that out, check out the video. The synth effects on here are just luscious and beautiful and shoegazy. A lot of the reverse stuff on the time warp block is super cool and you can tastefully use it. But some of the whammy stuff on that block is just a little bit confusing, and a lot of these alien sounds, likewise, how would you really work this into a song? If you've used this pedal, if you're an expert on this pedal and you've used this and worked it into a song, I'm dying to hear, always ready to be inspired. I'd love to be showed a bit more about how to use this pedal. It's kind of like a Star Trek laser or something, right? An old school 70s sci-fi sound effect. At the highest vibration frequency, you can kind of see how you would use it a bit more. I'm going to turn the treble all the way down and the bass up a little bit just to take out some of the harshness. And then on 23, it's controlling the input level, so pedal rocked all the way back, 0 input level, which means no volume. Keeping the oscillation fairly consistent, it feels, but just allows you to bring it in almost with a volume ride. So that's a bit more subtle. You want to just bring in a slice of this in the middle of a song for an effect, for atmosphere, just to add a touch, and the pedal allows you to kind of bring it in and bring it back out again. .24 and 25 are ring modulators, and again the pedal's going to control the mix and the amount respectively on both of those effects. So it's a little bit like the original Alien sound on setting 20, but it sounds a bit more familiar to anyone who's ever heard a ring modulator. I have a little bit of experience with that on the Octafuzz pedal, which sort of does a bit of that as it's bringing up the octaves. That's a dry sound, and then you can mix in some of the ring modulation. So with a straightforward bend up to E on the 3rd string, and then with the ring modulation. So it's a bit clearer and distinct than, say, sound number 20, where I was doing that bend, and with the full pixelation effect on, the bend bore no resemblance to the original bend I was making. It just, they were not the same notes. You couldn't even hear the original dry sound under there at all. With the ring modulation, you can hear that original bend as it go from D to E. Hear that, but there's also kind of another bend going down as this one comes up, so there's that weird phase, that weird pitch shift happening, but you can kind of still hear the original sound underneath. So it's a little more discernible what the underlying melody is that you're playing. Sounds robotic and metallic and chimey and a little alien. Your data has been loaded. And then 25, the amount of ring modulation is going to be controlled by the pedal. A little bit and a lot. So 26 and 27 are what's called alien ring modulators, and the pedal's going to control the rate and the input level respectively on both of those. If anybody grew up in the 80s and heard the version of War of the Worlds with Richard Burton as the narrator and a bunch of cool musicians in there, there were some really atmospheric alien sounds in there, kind of windswept, when the Martians take over Earth and this red wheat grows and chokes the life out of all of the earthbound foliage. And it's just this kind of red sea of weed all over the planet, and there's spooky wind blowing, and our hero is kind of on his own looking out on this vista. You know, those musicians were using a lot of really cool contemporary sound effects to get across the emotion of what the story was conveying. And honestly, this kind of reminds me of that. This is super cool. So in among the alien block with the ring modulators and the pixelation, where you got to be subtle about how you use this in and of itself is the kind of thing you can play around with. This effect number 26. It just has its own emotion to it. Of all the patches on here, that one just on its own just invites me to play and have a little fun. 27 is essentially the same alien ring modulator, but it controls the input level. So this is where there's nothing happening and then there's a lot happening. Nothing happening and then a lot. So because it is an overbearing effect, this allows you to bring this in the middle of a song maybe or a performance, and you have the ability to say, okay, that's a bit much, let me ride it back and just have it in the background. But theoretically you could do that with the volume on your guitar. So, you know, is it really necessary to have that patch on there? I'm not so sure. 28 and 29 of the alien block do sample, hold, and sample, hold, octave. That's what it says, and the pedal controls the rate. So let's have a look at that. So I think what that's saying is it's sampling the note you're playing and then doing a few things to the note, making some kind of a weird little loop. And the rate of how quickly that little oscillation of the loop goes can be controlled with the pedal. It's definitely a really unique sound. It's super weird, and you can definitely feel that you could use that in a certain part of a song or in a recording, but it's not the kind of thing that you crank out routinely. It just goes to show you this pedal has these weird corners and nooks and crannies that you can seek out odd sounds. And the only person in the audience who's going to know what you're doing is the other person who has one of the space stations. Everyone else is going to either just, what the hell, or if they're a guitarist, they're going to say, what the hell was that sound? And you're going to point to this thing. That's 28. 29 does the same thing, but it brings in what I think is a lower octave. Truly alien sounds, really weird, really cool. So that's it for the alien block of the XP300 pedal. And next week I'm going to go through the last block of sounds on here, what's called sonic. If you like what you see on the channel, always hit that like button and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified when I post new content. And I'll see you again when I go into the final 10 sounds on here.